Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It's so good to have you with us to the home edition. Today, Royal Ailes is going to be on camera talking with Governor Kevin Stitt. Royal?
Thanks, Sam. I'm here with the 28th governor of the state of Oklahoma, Mr. Kevin Stitt. Thank you, sir, for being here today and visiting our great little campus here in Northeast Oklahoma.
My pleasure. Looking forward to hanging out with you, and just had a great meeting with some of the leaders in Claremore.
Now, you have a little personal history with this part of the state, Oklahoma, Claremore, Owasso, Bartlesville. Give me a little history there.
Yeah, so my mom graduated from Skiatook High School. I actually went to Skiatook in kindergarten before we moved to the other part of the state. My granddad had an 8th grade education, was a dairy farmer from kind of South Washington County. And so I spent my summers up here. I grew up in Norman. My dad was a pastor, and granddad was my hero, and kind of traveling back up here to this part of the state was always great, fond memories coming over to Claremore with him, and it was fun.
Cool. So, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Northeast Oklahoma, Western Oklahoma, which one's better? Don't want to put you on the spot.
I'll tell you this. So after college, after Oklahoma State, I moved to Tulsa, got my first job, and then that's where I spent the next 21 years raising my family. So love Northeast Oklahoma. And then I've been back now in Oklahoma City for 2 years. But my heart is still, I think, in eastern Oklahoma.
Foothills of the Ozarks.
That's right.
You can't beat it, right?
It's beautiful. I mean, it's definitely the most beautiful part of the state, for sure. But Oklahoma City has a lot of great things going. They have done amazing with their city. And Oklahoma is becoming the place to be located right now. And I'm so excited to talk about that and some of the things that are going on in economic development.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Oklahoma has become a beam of light, if you would say that, because some companies are coming in. What's making that happen for us when 3-4 years ago they wouldn't even look at us?
I think number one, it's our pro-business policies, our pro-freedom. There's never been a bigger difference right now between a state like Oklahoma versus a state like California or New York. These states are trying to mandate and dictate to their citizens exactly how to live their lives. They're closing their economies down. And I believe the business owners and people are getting fed up. I hear it every day about people moving to Oklahoma. We just announced a 2,000 person company called Canoe, electric vehicle manufacturer. We've been specifically targeting automobile manufacturing. This happens to be an electric vehicle company, and we're just excited about them. They're going to be moving to eastern Oklahoma, bringing 2,000 jobs, opening their plant in 2023. And we believe that's going to it's going to be an anchor, but there'll be tons of other companies that kind of spur out and come supply and support that one big industry.
So you're getting the good. There's going to be bad that comes with it, because do we have the base to handle that kind of employment?
Yeah, I mean, workforce is always the question that we always get. And that's why I'm so focused on Common Ed, career techs, higher ed. How do we work and train the workforce that's needed? But they always ask me those questions. When Elon Musk, when we were trying to recruit Tesla to Oklahoma, we had several meetings with him. And this is kind of a funny story. So we knew he was going to be asking about workforce. And so we had posted a job description, an engineering job you had to move to Oklahoma on a fake company's name. And when he asked me that question, he said, well, can I really get engineers to move to Oklahoma? I pulled out a huge box of 3,000 resumes of already vetted people and said, here it is. They already are moving to Oklahoma. There you go.
And so why didn't he take us up on it?
Man, we thought we had him. But just kind of going through that process, we learned a lot, and we landed Canoe right after that. So we ended up second place. He chose wrong. He went to Austin. And I think he'll ultimately regret it. I think the permitting process and all the stuff that he's having to deal with now, we've heard that Oklahoma was the right spot for him.
So Mid-America over in Pryor isn't the only place that's popping up with new growth that's coming in. Where are some other places around the state that's seeing a lot of activity, people looking at it and maybe making some decisions to come here?
Well, I'll tell you, Mid-America certainly is one of the spots that Commerce promotes a lot, because those are shovel-ready sites. They're fantastic. We'd actually like to create another Pryor Industrial Park on the western part of the state, on the southern part of the state, and the northern part of the state. But when you look at the map on the jobs that we've created and recruited, Oklahoma City, Tulsa are getting a lot, but about 30% of the new jobs we've landed have been to rural Oklahoma. And you can look at a map and see all the different spots. So really it's just kind of spread out everywhere. We're fixing to announce a big deal in Madill, Oklahoma. The owners want to be here in state when we make the announcement, but they've already decided, they've already started doing some things. It's going to be about 600 jobs there. That's in very southern Oklahoma. So as governor, it's so fun for me to be in Claremore, but then I get to see all 77 counties and travel around the state. And for an Oklahoma boy that grew up here, fourth generation, it's so fun for me to see and try to help put these pieces together for Oklahoma.
If you didn't grow up a cheerleader, you've become one.
That's right.
Just because you get to go to all the counties.
That's exactly right.
So a lot of that growth, some of it's in rural Oklahoma, but with that is the ugly, and that is infrastructure. Choctaw Nation just came in and said, we have a lot of interest in our area, but we just don't have the infrastructure. So what's the solution there to fix that problem? Is there a solution to fix that problem?
You know, number one, we've done a lot of stuff with consolidation. I'm trying to save as much of the taxpayer dollars that I can do to get dollars on target. For example, it's common sense to me and most of your viewers to put Department of Transportation and the Turnpike Authority together. It's really just roads and infrastructure for Oklahomans. Why do we have two separate structures? So trying to consolidate, put some of those things together to think about this as building infrastructure for the state. I've got a couple projects with Tim Gatz that we're looking at to invest with the cost of funds right now are very, very low. So is now the time with almost 1% interest rates to really to invest in some more development and roads and around the state of Oklahoma. We've got an initiative for rural 2 lanes to add shoulders to all of our 2 lanes for safety around the state, to do some more loops around Oklahoma City and Tulsa. But some of that comes with turnpikes. And
That was going to be the next question. Is that going to cost us on the turnpike side?
Yeah, some of it comes with turnpikes around some loops around Oklahoma City. So those are always controversial that we're trying to work through. We've fully funded our roads fund now. We spend $575 million directly to our what we call our roads fund in Oklahoma. So infrastructure to me, there's 4 things that everybody wants the government to focus on and be good at. And that's educating our kids, healthcare, the economy, and roads and bridges. And I always remind my team, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or you live in Claremore, or you live in Oklahoma City, you want those 4 things. So let's break through the noise and let's make sure we focus on being top 10 in those 4 things. And that's kind of my message to my team.
So one of your top 10 messages is education, and you've helped Common Ed this last term really helped them a lot. What are you going to do, or is there a plan in place to help higher ed? Because I hear this a lot, because I travel to 22 counties that I serve as a general manager of a TV station, and everybody says, how can I afford to put my kids in school with higher ed? Because it is costly. So is there a plan in place? Are you looking at it? What's the game plan?
Yeah, you know, we've increased their funding as well, but you know, Common Ed, we spent more than we've ever spent in our state history, $3.2 billion. And so now we're up over $800 million for higher ed as well. But really, we have to break through some of the silos. So when I talk about silos, what we're talking about is you've got Common Ed that's just focused on K through 12. And then you've got career techs that are focused kind of on maybe 10th, 11th, 12th, and post-graduating high school. Then you got higher ed. Well, I want us to focus on the kids because everybody's unique, right? Half the kids go to college, half the kids don't. But there are tremendous jobs and opportunities for everybody. Right. And so really trying to break through those silos. I believe we have the money in Oklahoma to fund all these things properly, but everything's so siloed. For example, the money that goes into career tech, there's certain monies that can only be spent for new buildings instead of operations costs. So then you see people just continuing to build new buildings, which is frustrating for me. I think the taxpayers, if they understood it, they were like, well, we don't need more buildings. I need to move some of that money maybe to higher ed or Common Ed. But until we can break through some of the structural issues, it's always going to be problematic. So I'm trying to work on the structure before we can actually, move the needle. Also, we've done an individual career plan for every single sophomore, right? So if you're a sophomore in high school, we want those kids to take a test to show them what the pathways are to a great career. Whether it's an electrician, it's a plumber, it's a 2-year engineering degree, or it's a 4-year and then on to a master's. I just met with a company up in Dewey, Oklahoma yesterday. And he was telling me a story. He has a lot of engineers. He hires 2-year engineers with an associate's degree. And he had a German PhD engineer come in and meet with his 2-year engineering from a community college in Dewey. And when they went back, the German engineer wrote back and said, it was great to meet another PhD engineering American that's as smart as I am over here. And little did he know, this was an associate's degree, but they were talking the same lingo. They were in a manufacturing facility. My point is, I think we discount some career techs and some 2-year colleges, and we need to make sure that we're promoting that to the young people, that there are fantastic jobs and careers out there for every single person.
So let's change the direction here a little bit more. You've been governor now for 2 years. What's been the biggest, the best thing you've seen and done as a governor?
Oh man, there's so many fun things. I mean, I get to represent our state. I've met President Trump, I've met President Biden. But I think the thing that I remember the most, that gives me most enjoyment, is the chance when I get to meet a young person and go to a school and put my hand on an 8th grader and encourage them that they can be governor, they can do anything that they want. Because growing up, I never met any governors, and so it's what you're able to inspire so many young people that's really, really exciting. And then from the legislative standpoint, changing the culture in Oklahoma City, bringing some common sense, some business acumen has been really great. Like, we have the largest savings account than we've ever had in state history. When I got there, we didn't have hardly any savings, and we would go through these cuts and cycles. Mm-hmm. And so I set a division. We need to have $2 billion in savings, and we have $1.8 billion right now. We'll get over that hump this year. Mm-hmm. And that really protects the taxpayers. It protects Rogers State. It protects roads and bridges to be able to plan. It protects, we gave our school teachers a pay raise in 2019. By being fiscally disciplined and not wasting your money, you can really plan better. Revenue, we learned this in business, doesn't just always go up in a straight line. And we can't cut next year and the year after and go back and forth. So the whipsaw and that change that I've made, I think is really, I think it's important for the future of Oklahoma.
So as a business guy, you've never had to deal with a bunch of CEOs that are individuals. Now you've got them almost kind of like a board of directors. What's been the biggest challenge in the 2 years you've been governor working with the legislature?
Yeah, my first year, I kind of laugh at it, was a honeymoon. We got everything done we wanted. The second year, not so much. Yeah. I learned what a veto override was. Okay. And
they don't teach you that in business class.
No, they don't. And then the third year was great. I kind of reinvented myself and did a better job of working with the legislature. But you're right. The legislature, they have a job to do. They appropriate, they write the laws, and the executive branch has a I sign all the laws, and we have to enforce the laws, and so then you got the judicial branch. So learning how to work together is certainly, it's different than in the business world, but it's fun. It's fun. The other thing I'd say that Oklahomans need to understand, the politics, what I hope they understand about me is that I am going to fight the battles for what's best for 4 million Oklahomans. I never think about what's good for this industry or that industry, and I'm really thinking about how do I move the needle for the next generation, never worry about the next election. And I think that's important for people to see, and I think Oklahomans can see that in me as I'm fighting these different battles. A lot of people, are maybe focused on this industry or the money that comes into politics. It's really disappointing when you think about all the pressure that is on our elected officials.
That's unique because most politicians are thinking about the next cycle. Halfway into their term, they're looking at the next election cycle, which makes them more reserved, conservative.
That's right.
And nothing gets done.
They don't want to rock the boat. Maybe I'll do it on the next term. And that's so wrong because our forefathers, they want, and Oklahomans want us to come be disruptive and do things differently and not do the same things that we've done since 1907. We have to do things differently. We have technology now. So again, I'm moving the needle, and sometimes that's disruptive, and this industry may not like it, and that industry, but I know Oklahomans they're listening and they're seeing it, and they can see through some of the smoke that some of the industries might try to throw up, and and confuse them. They can see me fighting for them.
So give me a little more clarity on your next 2 years. What do you want to accomplish? What's the game plan?
You know, really, I have one more session before re-election. So we just have I've done 3 sessions now. A session is from February 1st through May 31st. And so it's like this past year, we did the savings. I was able to do education reform. We were able to lower taxes for every single Oklahoman because I've been holding these agencies flat. We reinstituted the earned income tax credit. But the next session is going to be the same. It's going to be moving the needle. We want to be the most business-friendly state in the country. We want to make sure that our regulations match up with industry. We want to make sure we have the best tax policy. I want to protect Oklahomans. I want to continue to focus on education reform. We've done a lot of criminal justice reform. When I took over, we were 50th, last place in the country in incarceration rates, and we're now 46th. I've moved that 4 spots. I've closed down a private prison. And so we're going to continue to move the needle and lock up people that we're afraid of and not that we're just mad at.
Right.
And so we're doing some bail reform. We're doing some those kind of things to give people second chances. But really it's about being the top 10 places to be in business. And that's something we'll always kind of keep pushing the needle on.
Well, to be in business, you got to have some credit, and you just talked about the credit rating, how you've helped to improve that. So tell our viewers a little bit more what you're talking about when you're talking about the credit rating.
Yeah, so the credit agencies, you've got Standards & Poor, S&P, you've got Fitch and Moody's are kind of the 3 big, and they rank companies and different entities on how they can bond and what their borrowing costs are, basically. My team just got back from New York as we were pitching them that they need to improve our credit rating. I think we're a AA right now. And so it's really important. It saves Oklahoma taxpayers on having to service debt and having to when we borrow money maybe for roads and bridges, do you want to borrow at 3.5% versus 2.5%? So those credit ratings on how they look at the state, our savings was a huge plus for us. So they can see what we're doing in Oklahoma to diversify our economy. They don't want us to be super reliant on one industry. The McGirt issue is something that they ask us about in New York. They're worried about if that affects taxes, and they know about some tax protests. They ask questions for our team about the McGirt. But we're hoping to get our credit rating improved in Oklahoma. And right now we're kind of in what they call the stable, so they haven't said that they're going to bump us up yet.
Well, let's talk a little bit about McGirt. That's become a big issue in this state. You have come out against the ruling that the Supreme Court came down on McGirt. And I think we have a graphic of a couple of things that you have said. Let's go past that one. And where the Supreme Court ruling on McGirt continues to tear Oklahoma apart. One of the most basic functions in the United States is the ability to enforce the rule of law and keep the public safe. And that this cannot stand because it is ripping us apart. You mentioned earlier today when you were talking to the chamber here in Claremore that we're losing the east side of our state as part of the state. It's becoming a territory. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really important for people to understand. So basically, we grew up in Oklahoma and we had no reservations. Even the tribal chiefs have testified before Congress as late as 2018 that said the good thing about Oklahoma is we don't have reservations. That was a common practice, right? Because a reservation is land held in common and reserve for a tribe. And at statehood, we allotted out all of our land, 160 acres at a time, to great Oklahomans. People like my great-great-granddad, right? I'm part Cherokee. And so when the Supreme Court said that reservations still exist, what they said was now all of eastern Oklahoma is a reservation. So now you have 1.8 million non-natives living on a reservation. Nowhere in the country is it like that. And so now our district attorneys, Matt Ballard, right here in Claremore, he told me that 95% of his cases that he's referred aren't getting prosecuted. He is they're pulling their hair out because even natives that call Matt Ballard or call the Claremore Police Department or the Tulsa Police Department, their crimes are not being prosecuted. They don't understand it. They're having to be referred to the tribal courts and then a non-native is saying, well, what do you mean? If the crime was a native against them, They don't have, the district attorneys can't prosecute their crimes. They don't have any rights. They're not voting in the Cherokee election or the Creek election, but now a non-native is now subjected to the rules that they have no say in the elections. That's preposterous, right? It's not going to end well. And then if you think about the revenue side of it, we've got thousands of protests in our state right now on taxes. People checking the box that they don't live in the state of Oklahoma, so they shouldn't have to pay taxes. Well, if we have an erosion of our revenue, that's going to affect Rogers State. It's going to affect your TV station and our roads and bridges and our education system. And so we have to have one set of rules. It boils down to this. Do you want to have different sets of rules based on your race? That's taken our country back hundreds of years. We have to have one set of rules regardless of your race in Oklahoma, for criminal, for taxes, for everything. And that's basically my point to Oklahomans is I want to fight for Oklahoma's sovereignty. 4 million Oklahomans, what's best for 4 million Oklahomans?
Have you had conversations with Chief Hoskins and the other chiefs in the tribe in Northeast Oklahoma? What have they said to you about this?
We have had conversations with them. I've had some of them over to the mansion for dinner, invited them all over. And basically, they're in a tough situation because their constituents, there's people that vote in their elections. They think it's the best thing that's ever happened in the last 100 years in Indian country. They got the reservation back. Right. I held a victims forum to try to give an opportunity for victims to let the district attorneys know what was happening and the district attorneys to explain to them why their crimes weren't being prosecuted. And we got shouted down. They said, get off the reservation. And so Oklahomans need to understand what's happening, the revenue piece, but also the lack of prosecution of crimes. And now all of a sudden, your district attorneys don't have the rights they did last year. And that's frightening for people. Even for Native Americans like me, my mom's not going to understand if her car gets stolen that the district attorney can't prosecute that crime. Right?
Right.
Nobody's going to understand that.
Right.
And the thing that the district attorneys are telling us is the feds are not prosecuting those crimes. And the tribes, we have no transparency. Most people can't vote in those elections anyway. They don't know what's going on.
Well, let's go. I only have a couple minutes left. Let's go to one other topic that I like to talk to folks about. You come from a church family, pastor in the family. How has your faith helped you to be governor through all of this?
Oh man, well, I don't know how people do it without faith. Life is so hard already, and so I'm very public about my faith. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I pray every single day. People come up to me all the time and they pray for me, ask how they can pray for me, and it's just so important. You have to have your priorities right. You have to put God first, then your family, then your work. And so we do that. We try to do that back when I was running my company. Now that I'm running the state, we can talk about it. We don't need to hide from it. Our country was founded on godly principles. And it's an important part of Oklahoma. It's an important part of my personal life, and it's an important part of a lot of Oklahomans' life. And when we sit down and gather as meals, we're going to pray and thank God for the provision that He's provided us. I pray all the time, protecting all four corners of Oklahoma, protecting our marriages and our families. And as the leader of the state, I love praying over the state and the families and the businesses and that we prosper. And I hope people can feel it and see what's happening in the state of Oklahoma. There's some people that criticize you over it. Right. Some people don't think faith has a place in government. Yeah. But we're still just, I'm just a Oklahoma boy that is now serving as a governor, and I'm going to go back to the private sector, and you can't take out who I am and how I live my life and somehow pretend that I'm not just the same person that I grew up in Oklahoma and went to Norman High School and went to Oklahoma State, and eventually I'll be back in the business world. And that's what our forefathers want. They want somebody They want somebody to leave the private sector, go serve for a period of time, and go back to the private sector.
Well, I got to leave it there. We're running out of time. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Hey, thank you.
I appreciate it. Sam, we're going to kick it back to you.
Thank you, Royal, and thanks to Governor Stitt. Folks, that's all the time we have. We'll see you back next time.